I'm going to switch now to distributed economies. So there's my postdoctoral research for now. It's my position in the Department of Design in Helsinki. I have been teaching also. We have an cross-sectoral, multidisciplinary master's program called Creative Sustainability. We have students from business, architecture, design, real estate. And so we have been teaching actually PSS in that program for many years. But I'm now actually a researcher more than a teacher. And my doctoral dissertation was on Fab Labs, which are these grassroots digital fabrication communities, people who are using laser cutters and 3D printers. I think that you're familiar with those in the design context, but these are also kind of hackers, people who are exploring the meanings of what it means to bring these digital tools into our everyday lives. Helsinki is in the, I keep pushing the wrong one. Helsinki is in the south of Finland, but Finland is at the top of the world, so we're quite far away, quite far north.
Near Santa Claus.
Yeah, to be honest, I was born in Canada. I moved to Finland about 20 years ago, and I'm ethnically Finnish, but my grandparents are Finnish. So half of me says, no, Santa Claus is Canadian. The other half you can vote on that. Wherever you send your letter, it will either go to Canada, to the North Pole, or it will go to Finland. Your letter will get answered by someone. Okay, so distributed economies. What we've already seen this from Leonardo as well, is that the advantage of this idea of distributed is that you have resilience in the network because of the way that the network is worked. The nodes are connected to each other. And the other thing, of course, also, which is a little bit difficult for how we have our economic and social systems set up now, is that the centralized systems are often very hierarchical. Distributed systems are heterarchical, so the relationships are quite different. In the communities that I'm studying, it means also that people kind of self-select in to do these. If you think of the way that open source software, Linux or Wikipedia type of artifacts are produced, people actually self-select to be able to contribute something, and then the way that all these contributions are integrated into the system is a very different way from, let's say, a centralized mass production system. We do not actually have an understanding of distributed economies per se, though, in research or in practice. So what we're trying to do in LENS maybe is trying to kind of promote it as a way to understand the benefits of whatever you want to call it, whether it's localizing production or something like that. In Finland, we're very concerned. We have strong industries around biomass, whether it's around cellulose inventions and innovations or things like that. So the concept of distributed economies in Finland might be more about circular bioeconomy. So biomass waste from one industry would be then returned into the system and be used by another industry or something like that. But there's a benefit to kind of getting a common language and trying to understand distributed economies, and that's what we're trying to do in LENS. So there is one article that especially those of us in research are using all the time to be able to understand what this idea is, and the whole idea is that sustainability is the core. The reason why we want to examine and do distributed economies or study them like this is just because they are more sustainable, socioeconomically and environmentally more sustainable than some activities involved with centralized mass production and consumption. And especially these large-scale centralized production units, as I said on the slide, they're favored by neoclassical economic drivers. But it's not that we are intending to replace everything that we have now. We need radical innovation to be able to do this, but we're not trying to wipe everything clean, explode everything, and build everything up locally again. The point is to find out what should be centralized, what should we keep, what should we change, what should we distribute, and what should we localize based on the resource flows. So let's look at a few of these concepts here. I have marked some words in red because we're thinking about new ways to actually define success. We saw in Leonardo's presentation the idea of the satisfaction index or the happiness index. But this is also kind of it's a bit of a hard sell that Bhutan can put in the happiness index and say that we're not using GDP anymore, but most of the world operates on the fact that, yeah, GDP is the definition of success. So this is a challenge. We also have then the difficulty, at least I think it's a difficulty to find out how to measure also what we're aiming for. Like what are we trying to optimize? What should be centralized? What should be mass production? What should be localized? What should be distributed? How do we measure those things? Is it about the meanings and the values? It is definitely about the meanings and the values. And that's why I think it's been very interesting to study these Fab Lab communities. But then some things maybe we should actually examine it using LCA and these kind of traditional environmental impact assessment methods. Some more words on the slide. So as we saw, there's some principles or fundamentals that we should understand about distributed economies. Things like flexible, small-scale production systems, the idea that we should be reinventing the definition of quality and prioritize quality for this kind of old idea of production efficiency. Like I said before, we don't want hierarchies and closed innovation, we want open innovation and heterarchies. We're looking at a diversification of needs and wants because we're having new types of consumers and new behaviors. More symbiotic relationships. So we have these more self-organizing and non-competitive processes, integrated design and innovation, and so on. If you want to check the paper, there's all kinds of a nice list of all of these kinds of fundamentals. So again, let's look at some of these highlights. When we're looking at this idea that small is good rather than large being good. We want quality rather than efficiency. We're talking about new definitions of success again. There's also synergy with PSS thinking because, again, we're looking at what consumers want, the satisfaction unit, and these kinds of things. So that is already some kind of orientation to the PSS way of thinking. Integrated design and innovation often comes with how we're trying to teach and do sustainable product service system design. I have a little bit of a thing also, sometimes I'm stereotyping a little bit, but when I think of the way we teach and try to do PSS design, because we have to think of systems and we have to think of new stakeholder interactions, we might think of it as a little bit top-down. But I have been really in the grassroots with these forerunner communities. And I think Leonardo also said that sometimes it's a little bit just standing back and seeing what people are doing. We know from the DESI's labs, Manzini's work on social innovation also is that sometimes you need to kind of step back, let people do what they're doing, not interfere, but try to see what it is that we can do to help optimize sustainability, to boost, to promote the sustainability behaviors and maybe try to inhibit the things that seem to be a little bit less sustainable. So I'm not sure if that is PSS synergy, if we're already knowing how to do that, if that's a challenge. This is something that we need to look at in our project. I think we have seen this already. We have these kinds of working definitions already now in the LENS project from Professor Carlo Vezzoli. So again, small-scale production units, users are the producers. Especially it's important this idea of social equity and cohesion, especially with the partners that we're working on. Finland is middle class. The income gap between the rich and the poor is growing, but it is nothing compared to the other countries that we're working with. Direct access to resources for local users, and of course the three dimensions of sustainability. So in the LENS project, we also have tried to decide what kinds of distributed economy topics there could be. And I think that there will be a lot of discussion on what the definitions will be, what should we include, what is not included in distributed economies. We have distributed renewable energy, which Fabrizio mentioned, which has been explored in the Lenses project. We have distributed production of hardware, which we might call distributed manufacturing. We might call it open hardware. Again, there's not an agreement on these terms. So both the people who are doing the work are calling it a certain thing. The media people who are writing about it are calling it something else. The researchers are calling it something else, and the policymakers are calling it something else again. Distributed production of software, like Linux, open source software, etc. Distributed production of information and knowledge. And finally, distributed design, which is, I think, probably the fuzziest one for all of us that we're trying to see. But open innovation, open design, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, crowd design, these types of activities. So in the project that we're going to be doing here in Brazil, then we are focusing on distributed design, distributed manufacturing as topics. So in distributed design or crowd design, one example that Carlo has given is this open source car platform. Modular open source electric car platform enables businesses and startups to design, prototype, and build electric vehicles and transportation services. For hardware, there's again all kinds of examples of Arduino 3D printing, even local vegetable gardens. So if it's some kind of tangible object that is done in order to be able to localize and strengthen local networks, then we can think of it as distributed production. Okay. So I looked at the research. I have my own kind of view on distributed production just based on what I was interested in my doctoral research. So I was looking at researchers who were examining distributed production even though they didn't actually call it distributed production. And I was interested in those kinds of businesses or activities. They were also grassroots communities who were involving the users in new ways. So the whole idea that citizens are much more involved in the design and production of artifacts in a very different way. So the research tended to cover a scale from large kind of production volumes to small, and then on the other hand, there was closer to traditional manufacturing here on the left side compared to complete peer-to-peer communities then on the right side. So what we can see now in activities, at least in my vision of distributed production or my definition, based on the research, is this personal fabrication, fab labs, the maker space, the hacker space type of stuff that happens there. And then here on this side, then we have mass customization. And we've seen some examples already today. And then there's some other possible activities that are only now emerging. So what was interesting for me in my doctoral research then is particularly what is happening in digital manufacturing and how this enables this localizing of production, access for ordinary people to be able to design and make their own things. And it depends. Like sometimes in Factory 2.0 model, it's more a case that it's controlled by the company, that they are controlling what kind of translating what people want into their own idea and then providing it for them. In the DIY 2.0 model, people are going into a makerspace themselves and they're designing and making their own things. What's happening also is that they're doing it in this peer-to-peer way, the same way that's happening in Web 2.0, where people are developing not just web services, but other kinds of digital services like Linux or Wikipedia. What I think is important and why I thought that the study in Fab Labs is important is because I think that is where the meanings and the values are being actually explored and co-created right now by these forerunner communities. So it means that if these digital manufacturing technologies spread, these meanings and values that are already kind of being discussed in the maker communities are the ones that might become dominant also for the rest of the society. So if we as a society decide that digital manufacturing is just about pumping out plastic Yodas, hobby activities, and so on, that's what it's going to be viewed as. But if we see it as some kind of thing, for example, we can print spare parts so that we can repair our own products. If we see it as meaning and value for creativity and local innovation, grassroots innovation, and so on. That will be the kind of message that becomes dominant. And this is something that we are kind of co-creating now all together as a society. All right. I was also looking at what the research said about the environmental issues in distributed production, and there are, of course, certainly environmental issues in, especially in digital fabrication. The research is mainly covering those circles that are in gray, so they're looking at LCA and material effects, toxicity, electricity consumption, energy consumption, and these kinds of issues. What is most interesting, but the most probably challenging for us as researchers is the right-hand side, that we have changes in consumption patterns. Are we really shifting from this mass production paradigm to a distributed production paradigm? And is that going to be actually environmentally beneficial or not? It's a little bit of a tricky thing to study. So the research, actually, there isn't very much empirical research. The only empirical research would really be the ones that would be the LCA studies, for example, if they would compare a certain type of object being produced in mass production compared to being produced in some kind of additive manufacturing or rapid prototyping industry. But they do argue things like, even though there might be higher environmental impact per unit, the volumes are actually very, very small. And in all cases, we are producing only according to need. In mass production, what happens often, especially in the fashion and apparel industry, is that a lot of the clothing that is produced doesn't even make it into shops. So there's not only a huge amount of post-consumer waste because of fast fashion, there's a huge amount of pre-consumer waste that goes straight to landfill. So in this conception of distributed production, we would be saving very many resources just because we were producing only according to need. And of course, the principle is that we will be changing supply chains. We would even be changing perhaps retail infrastructure. So people would be perhaps ordering things from online fabrication services and things like that, rather than having, especially in Finland, we have people who drive in their private car to a big box shopping mall on the weekends, and so on and so on. So we might be able to save embodied energy out of this kind of infrastructure. At least this is a vision for these researchers. There are some concerns that we're not really familiar with either. Maybe all of this wonderful maker movement and distributed production idea maybe just adds to existing material flow. High quality, if we're aiming for longevity in these products, or the closer person-product attachment and things like that, it might actually be more intensive production. And there's a few other issues there. I will finish. Leonardo also kind of hinted to these kinds of things also. What is it that we are trying to distribute and why? So this is something that we need to discuss in the Lens project, that I think the materials and the resources, localizing production, making local production networks, and localizing these material flows makes sense. And especially if it's solar panels or things like that, then the energy itself is actually distributed, and there's so many benefits that I can see there socially, economically, and environmentally. Energy self-sufficiency, resilience, people learning about energy, people taking control over their own energy resources, and so on. But then there are the principles that we've been calling the sharing economy. We saw some examples of Aguinaldo gave as well. So maybe it's not, this is where PSS comes in, maybe it's not sharing the materials and resources themselves, but sharing the use of them, like tool sharing, libraries, things like that. So, thank you very much.